What is up, YouTube? It is Coach Kolton here to bring you physique development tools, skills, and opinions that hopefully you can use for yourself to make some gains. Today, I want to talk about what to do on your weekend when you've executed your week perfectly, but just on the weekend, for whatever reason, you just kind of fall apart in the program. Now, I'm going to start this off with an absolute solution to your problem, and I've seen this so many times with all of my clients who I have helped with this exact problem, and typically that's just individuals tend to waver from their planned schedule when they're on the weekends, and that goes for everything to waking and sleeping. They will wake up later and fall asleep later. That can lead to a lot more snacking and a lot of different avenues of slacking in the program. And I find that if people can just adjust their schedule and make sure that they're maintaining a sleep-wake cycle that's appropriate to when they would normally work, they still get all the same results. They still eat their meals on time. They aren't snacking. They aren't doing things that they might not normally do on the weekdays. The other thing that I typically run into, this is kind of number 2 here, is individuals don't want to kind of give up that sort of weekend lifestyle where they go out with some friends, they have some drinks, maybe they play some bar games, or maybe there's just a friends thing that they have every weekend in which some beers are shared or maybe some alcohol is shared. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this. One, if you really want to make progress, it's just time to nut up or shut up and stop looking at life as an essential thing to go out and do things like that. That is not the norm. It is now, but 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the norm was not just to go out on the weekends and get obliterated. It was just to have fun with your friends and family and cultivate something that could last you in several generations of income, right? Now people kind of live for the weekend. So they make a bunch of money, then they spend it all on the weekend, and they make a bunch of money, and they spend it all on the weekend. So roles have sort of changed. And I understand that I'm not trying to be a black sheep and go against what people do. I just won't do that for myself. If I want to go have fun with my friends, I'll go have fun with my friends, but in a different setting that doesn't require food or drink. Let's say you do want to partake in that, though, and this is like, hey, Coach Kolton, I'm not going to be restricting myself from those sorts of things. Okay, fine, I get it. Understand that alcohol metabolism will slow down the rate of fat loss. As well, it will bump up your total caloric intake. So when you're looking at those two things, you can kind of think about, okay, my recovery and fat loss will be impeded for the next 3 to 4 days, and also my caloric intake will go up. So ultimately, to make up for that caloric intake, you're going to have to reduce the amount of food you're eating that day, which will furthermore impede the recovery for the subsequent days. But this isn't a problem. You can do it, right? Not everyone is trying to be an elite level bodybuilder or an elite level anyone. So just getting in shape doesn't require a great amount of recovery. It doesn't require an optimal amount of protein synthesis. It just requires a caloric deficit at the end of the day and proper stress management. So this individual wants to go out and have fun. What I would say to them, this is genuinely what I would say to any of my clients who are on the weekend and they're like, hey, I'm going to go out and have fun, Coach Kolton, and this is what's going to happen. I'd say, okay, let's look at this, right? So let's look at this situation from maybe taking a step out emotionally. Can we, instead of drinking beers or seltzers or anything like that that has a very, like a supersedingly high caloric intake, can we maybe preferentially move towards the hard liquors like the vodkas or the tequilas or the whiskeys? And I know that might sound counterintuitive, but when we become intoxicated, we're looking for that feeling. 1, 2, maybe 3 shots will get you there. Unfortunately, what people tend to do is they mistake the quantity of alcohol with a feeling of being more drunk. And what really is happening is how fast is that blood alcohol content crossing your blood-brain barrier and disrupting a couple things that makes you have that sort of intoxicated feeling, very dopaminergic sort of feeling. So people will drink to get that feeling. Once it's achieved, they start drinking more. And at that point, it just kind of is like a wave of bad stuff happening, right? They don't wait for that drink to take effect. They just say, okay, I want more, and I'm going to push it into that realm, and that's when they get really fucked up. So what I suggest to people is take it slow, have a shot or 2 or 3, and just embrace that feeling, but you don't need to drink beer after beer after beer. I would recommend just drinking hard alcohol because it's going to have the least amount of calories and it's going to get you to our objective, which is getting a little bit intoxicated much quicker. So it's going to restrict your amount of calories as well as getting you to your end goal quicker. And so you can have fun. In that sense too, I wouldn't recommend getting balls out drunk because inhibition just completely goes out the window when you do get drunk. And so food now, instead of something that maybe not be would worsen the outcome of the week you've had, doesn't really have that connection in your brain, and you just become more dopaminergic. So you just want to go for the food and get it, and so you get the food, you eat it, doesn't matter to you, but the next day it really will. And so if you can get into that place where you're a little bit inebriated but not all the way inebriated, it would be highly beneficial because you could still eat that food, but maybe in a controlled manner, or you could just totally disregard it in any case, but still have that fun, still have that vibe going. That's genuinely what I recommend. The third thing that I would recommend most of the time is, can we account for the calories ate on the weekend or the drinks consumed that are increasing calories on the weekend, which isn't hard to do by 400, 500, 600, increasing your weekly average calories, by maybe reducing subsequent day calories or the previous day calories. So let's say you're having a Saturday event where you know that it's going to be a high food intake, it's going to be lots of drinks going around. How can you counteract that if you're trying to improve your body composition? What you could do is say, okay, I probably consumed and drank about this many calories, and I was at 2,500 calories in an adequate deficit prior to that. But now, because let's say my weekly average has been raised due to that one day, I can maybe take the next 2 to 3 days and remove 300 extra calories and maintain the workload that I'm doing, cardio, weight retraining, etc. And that would be sufficient to kind of counteract that higher weekend event, right? And hopefully that's not a weekly thing, because that can really downtrot into like a bad cycle of habits, but you get the point. You're just making up for more calories consumed. But at the end of the day, I try to pose this to all my clients in a very philosophical way. I try to make them think about more things than just, am I going to have fun this weekend, and what is the short-term benefit that I'm going to get? I try to get people to be more goal-oriented and especially more value-oriented, and say, okay, I get like this is really seemingly like interesting or desirable for you, but what are your values as a person? Like, what do you truly want to be the outcome of your life? And does drinking repeatedly on the weekends or binge eating on the weekends result in that value base that you want for yourself? Is that going to achieve your goal? And the goal version of you, maybe that's an individual like yourself with a six-pack, or an individual who's highly financially stable or successful, would they be doing those things on the weekend? And like, what would they think about watching you do these things on the weekend? And just realize that what is being done by the majority doesn't make it the norm. And just because you might be the outcast in your group doesn't mean that that's the okay thing to do just because you feel uncomfortable. Look at it from a realistic perspective of your values and your goals, and be an individual. If you truly don't think that drinking is going to provide you any happiness outside of a single night, it might not be worth doing. And so finding an alternative might be more beneficial. There are alternative drugs that you can use. In some states they're legal, in some states they're not. Marijuana is a perfect one. By smoking a joint, hitting a vape, or hitting a bong, whatever you want to do, you are going to consume 0 calories. No calories consumed as compared to alcohol and probably the food that would come with alcohol. As well, it's not going to impede lipid oxidation, so you're in a surplus or a benefit, not a surplus, a benefit there. You could also look into things that are more sort of exotic. I wouldn't even call it that, but like GHB. It's an oral compound that would very much so replicate what being drunk would feel like. You have to be careful, because if you do too much of it, you might actually fall asleep. Just like you if you drank too much. But these are the things that I want people to start looking at. Like, hey, what can I do that's actually a healthier alternative? When we look at, population level data, what we see is that people who just quite frankly, alcohol is a significantly worse drug acutely and chronically than almost anyone you could pick up off the street. Literally. I mean, it is that bad. You will take blood work after a night of drinking. Your ALT and SLT or your GGT, like everything is significantly elevated. You have a shit ton of toxins within your blood. Whereas if you're going to smoke a joint, you're literally going to get no side effects. Your prolactin might be slightly increased, but that's about it. So you really have to consider these things and weigh the cost over benefit and say, okay, like I know I want to do this, but why? And is that why strong enough for me to disregard how I might feel the next day? And am I going to be happy in myself? Or is that 6 or 7 months from now me going to look back at myself now and think, what a fucking idiot? Or is he going to be proud that that individual stood up for himself and made the right choices? And it is a battle, right? And I always talk about the 12-step program with my clients for Alcoholics Anonymous. And sometimes it pertains to alcohol, but sometimes it pertains to other things in life. The 12-step program is a great program for almost any addiction. And trust me, we all have addictions. Even if it's not a substance, we all have addictions. But this goes for food, this goes for sleeping, this goes for missing workouts, this goes for the habits of just chewing your fingernails. The 12-step program is actually a really great one. Of course, you have to believe in a higher power, but disregard that and look at the other steps in the program. You have to be honest with yourself, and you're forced to do that. And that's one of the most foundational things to making progress and personality changes over a long term and behavioral changes over a long term. So when it comes to the weekend, you really have to weigh those things out. I'm an advocate for just balling up, like literally just grab your fucking balls. And if you're a female, grab whatever you got and just be a rigid motherfucker, because that is what's always going to get results, right? Discipline will set you free 100% of the time. It's when you try to make rules for yourself and things get a little gray that it doesn't really work out as you had planned. So that's just my food for thought. I hope you guys enjoyed. Deuces.